Welcome to Coffee and Conversations, mini episodes by victims and villains, the only podcast that dares to educate and engage mental health awareness through the lens of pop culture. I'm your co-host, Captain Nostalgia, and it's been a while since we've done one of these episodes, and we're trying to be a little bit better about doing mini episodes, and that's the reason why, if you guys are wondering why there's no opening music for this one, is because we're just kind of reworking and reformatting some of the side projects we've done, like Coffee and Conversations, our Patreon episodes, the Cage Corner podcast, and a lot of other stuff. But I'm joined by our editor-in-chief, Mr. Cam Smith.
What's up?
You know, the usual. So we're here talking about the brand new release, Invincible Dragon from Wellgo Entertainment. You guys can pick it up October 6th, 2020. We'll provide a link in the descriptions wherever you guys get your digital movies or physical movies as well. And I think me and you have very similar opinions on this movie.
Probably.
Well, it's like, so just before we get into spoilers, if you've ever wondered what Tommy Wiseau would do with a martial arts movie, this movie is your answer. A question I never thought I'd ever have to ask, but yet here we are.
No, and one we probably never wanted to see answered. Before we really launch into things, the thing that I want to do is a quick shout out to Corridor Crew, just because I'm a big fan of their YouTube channel, and they review both CGI and practical effects, as well as they have a whole series of stuntmen react, and I would love to see what they would do with this movie.
I would love to see some of this stuff too, because I mean, some of this stuff is hard to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Because of either the CGI or the way that it's shot, because typically, like, you look at something like the Imp Man franchise and how smooth the fight sequences are in that one, and even, I know I've talked to you about it and you edit the review, but Gundella has been one of my favorite foreign films of this year, if not my favorite films of this year, and just the fight sequences in that are just jaw-droppingly shot, beautifully choreographed, so well. So like, that's kind of like my expectations when I'm coming in to watch a movie that's set in the martial arts, especially foreign martial arts films.
Well, even especially a movie that you hear, the Hong Kong name attached to, just because so much of, Jackie Chan's work and Bruce Lee's work and everybody else has all come out of Hong Kong.
Yeah, Donnie Yen, too, is kind of like another like rising star that's coming up out of that. And then you get Invincible Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even know where to begin with this. I guess, like, general impressions. Like, I've shared mine, but...
Well, I mean, mind you, the lead guy on this was in one of the Ip Mans. So he's, at least in theory, his martial arts ability and... experience, I guess, is, it speaks for itself. The fact that he's done that, but just the way that it translates is just so hard to read sometimes. And I don't know if that's all just the way that they decided to shoot it, where it just kind of, fight scenes you sort of generally expect it to all be from one side. And the way that this one kind of felt was that it jumped around a whole lot. Like, there was a point where I kind of thought, this is like maybe a college kids film, and they just happen to have a drone, and they're like, yo, what would be really cool right here is if we did this part with a drone. There was at least one or two shots where I thought that's what I might have done if I had been in that place. Like that would have been my line of thinking, I guess.
So Ken Law is the visual effects artist, not the... So credits in this one are set up a little bit differently than American credits. So I don't have the director in front of me, but if I remember correctly, Fruit Chan is actually the director on this one. And it's kind of almost like he's like, trying to be like this like innovative filmmaker, and he's like, hey, we're gonna shoot on HD 35 millimeter at the same time.
You go with the Tommy Wiseau.
There's a Tommy Wiseau, yeah, who infamously shot The Room on 2 different kinds of film simultaneously, and kind of realized how shot himself in the foot in it. But that's kind of how I feel with the way that like the fight sequences jump back. It's kind of almost like you're watching a cinematic seizure almost kind of take place, the way that it jumps back and forth so much.
Yeah. And some of that's probably them covering for when they have the stuntmen doing the work, because I would imagine you're going to have people doing stunts with as crazy as some of this stuff going on in the movie are. But I mean, even then you have Zhang Jin or Max Zhang or whatever his name is. That's kind of like the leading guy on this, and he's a martial artist, so I imagine he's probably doing a fair amount of his own stunts. And then the other name in this that's kind of cool is it Silva?
Yeah, Anderson Silva.
Yeah, he's like a Brazilian mixed martial artist, which is kind of an interesting choice for a Hong Kong film.
So that's what I want to know. Like, if somehow one of the like people that casted this movie gets a hold of this podcast, email us or
yes, please,
Facebook or Twitter. Just DM us on some social and let us know how the casting process got. Like, I would just love to know that conversation. Like, hey, I was watching MMA last night, and this guy Anderson Silva, just like such an extraordinary fighter. Bet he would be great. I mean, not to bring it back to Imp Man, but they're like, it worked for Imp Man 3. It can work for this movie.
Maybe it is like there's a rich culture of tattooing in MMA, and maybe Silva already had the tattoos that he wears. Yeah, the snake that's like kind of around his shoulders. So they sort of thought, oh wow, we really don't have to do too much, touch up makeup wise for shots and whatnot.
So I guess with this being a martial arts movie, we should kind of jump into the martial arts aspect of it, because I feel like that was kind of my drawing. So like martial arts is like still a genre that is like new to me, and watching something like Imp Man 4 this year or Samurai Marathon or Gundella, I've really started to fall in love with these films. And then I'm reminded of this film, and this film both feels atrocious. That's not a word, is it? Atrocious.
It is. That's a word.
It just sounds weird coming out of my mouth. And nostalgic at the same time, because this feels like a love letter to some of the 50s camp in the genre. And they kind of decided to kind of, be this serious drama. But the thing about camp that we talked about in our Showgirls episode is that camp doesn't really set out to be made good. It's kind of bad that's done on accident that kind of becomes good in another light.
Yeah, when I think martial arts, I kind of think of one of two things. I either think of the first couple of Jackie Chan films,
sure,
where he's doing a lot of stuff in China, or I'm thinking more kind of newer stuff like The Raid, which is an absolutely brutal martial arts film, just in terms of everything that the martial artists themselves are able to do, mostly even without like wires and stuff. And this kind of felt like it was somewhere maybe in between, but like closer to the later Jackie Chan films. I don't know if you've ever seen the Zodiac movie that he made, where he was going after like the Zodiac heads, which are a Chinese thing from a palace that was looted by, I think, like the British. And just most of them have disappeared into private collections.
No.
But the whole thing for this movie is, he and his team of kind of people are out looking for these heads, because they're in one light, they're Chinese national treasures. and in another light, they're priceless artifacts. But just kind of in the way that Jackie Chan's humor comes across, just in his own martial arts kind of things. You know, there's a whole sequence where he's like, he's kind of on a shelf trying to balance a vase and like one of these heads, and just doing the classic Jackie Chan, like juggling and trying not to lose his balance and all this stuff. And it's almost like this film is taking itself so seriously that it borders on that kind of stuff, but with really good martial arts at the same time. Like there's some stuff that they did that was really cool, especially in the train fight scene.
Yeah, so the train fight scene, for as bad as it looks on the CGI, it is shot pretty well.
Yeah, the CGI was rough, but a lot of the actual like motions of the two stunt people / actors were
done really well.
Pretty cool.
And I would even say the Sinclair and Kowloon scene at the very end is another great one too.
Like on top of the tower.
On top of the tower. And so it's like you have a guy that's like his character, Kowloon, was basically afraid of heights in this, and we're kind of dipping into like
might have been afraid of heights.
Minor spoilers, so this is your official spoiler warning. But it was just such a really well progressed fight that, as crazy as it ends with the dragons and basically him being like hot potato, for lack of a better word, it ends super weird, but like as it progressed from like the kind of initial like showdown of the two to like where it ends on top of him like eventually Sinclair being tossed into the ocean, I think that's another solid fight too. Yeah.
The thing that I really did like about the first fight between Sinclair and Kowloon was not... So I think, and this is where I'm really curious about Corridor Digital's perspective on things. I think there was a couple things that were probably done with wires that were pretty neat, like when they kicked the table up into the air. And it sort of like went from Sinclair toward Kowloon, and then Kowloon stopped it. But the things that really kind of stuck out to me were more along the lines of the raid, like when the thumbtacks wound up on the ground and Sinclair basically just face plants Kowloon into them. It's like, I think there was a point where I just kind of looked at you and I was like, I really hope when he comes up from this, he just has these pins stuck out of his face. And then it cuts away and comes back and he actually like pulled them out. And I was like, yes!
All but two.
Yeah. Those ones stayed in there and then disappeared. I don't know.
The, which, I mean, I guess is kind of like another thing with the editing in this movie is so bizarre. The way that it flows. Like, there's one scene in particular where, like, I don't even remember where the characters were, but you turned to me and you were like, this should have existed before here. Like this particular scene does not exist here, or shouldn't exist.
Yeah, it was... There's the whole thing of, like... The sort of overall feel is like, here's a cop who, he's a great cop. He's got his whole life ahead of him on the force. And then he goes rogue, right? And he gets disciplined for that. He gets shipped off to this other police department, and then something goes wrong, and he's basically fired. The point in question was he and the inspector from the place he got shipped off to before he got fired they're in Hong Kong, which is a different place from where he was demoted to. And the inspector there, they've butted heads on something, and they're just like in like a casino or something.
Yeah.
And there's this whole sequence where they go through the casino to, I think it was a gym that,
it starts in the gym.
That's what it was.
It starts in the gym, and then it goes to the casino,
and then they leave. And I don't know, maybe the gym and the casino are in the same building. That's never really explained exactly.
There's a lot in this movie that's not explained.
That's true.